Welcome everyone. As you all know that today is World Environment Day, which is celebrated each year on 5th of June. But for Pakistan, this is particularly of more significance here this day because Pakistan is a global host this year. And you must be watching live stream on our Facebook pages since this afternoon when Government of Pakistan was hosting this event, where Prime Minister Imran Khan also addressed the conference. Today, in the second half, STPI is organizing this session in partnership with Switch Asia, a regional policy advocacy organization, and also in collaboration with United Nations Environment Program. And we thought that it is very high time to talk about sustainable living styles and sustainable consumption and production, and in relation with ecosystem restoration, which is this year's theme. And before going into detail and background and coming into the panelists, I would first like to share some of the housekeeping for the online audience and for those who have joined us here on Zoom as well. Please switch off your mic whenever you are speaking, and this is for our panelists as well. And switch on your cameras when you're speaking, and when you're not speaking, please switch off your microphones to avoid disturbance. And for the audience, when you have any questions, you may directly write in Q&A session where all the panelists would be able to see your questions, or you may raise your hands and our IT person would be giving you the access to speak, but that would be at the end of the conference at this session, online session. Where you would be able to, given the access to speak and ask about the topic. And with this short introduction, let me introduce our panelists. We have with us, Dr. Mushtaq Maiman, who is Project Manager of Switch Asia RPAC, and he would be speaking on demystifying sustainable consumption and production. We have with us Ms. Afia Salam, who is freelance environment and climate change journalist and development practitioner. She has worked a lot on many topics around climate change, her research and advocacy and awareness raising as well. And we have also with us, she would be speaking on very interesting topic, and perhaps my most favorite, go slow on fast fashion. And we have with us Dharmesh Shah, public policy analyst and advisors to BFFP and GAIA, G-A-I-A. And he would be speaking on plastic pollution, is circular economy the magic bullet? We will be joined by former parliamentary secretary on climate change, Ms. Rumina Khurshid Alam in a little while. And she is also currently a member of National Assembly of Pakistan. And this maybe if we get the access, we would be joined by State Minister for Climate Change, Mr. Taj Gul, if she had a chance, because she has just got free from the convention center. And in between, we will also request our very dear Ms. Archana Datta, who is very actively leading Switch Asia these days, coordinating and everything. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And from STPI, we have with us Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, who is Executive Director, Sustainable Development Policy Institute. So with this little background, I would request Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri to please give welcome remarks to our guest and also speak a little bit about circular economy context, because since you're economists, so we would like to hear in the context of circular economy when it comes to ecosystem restoration and sustainable consumption and production context. Over to you.
Thank you, Mariam. And when you were mentioning about switching on and switching off, I was thinking it's Switch Asia, and we have to switch on when we speak, and we have to switch off when we not speaking, switch off our mics as well as our cameras. And that is, I think, the approach which nature is asking us when we are talking of sustainable consumption and production. So that's the balance that we have to maintain, consume when required and whatever is required, and produce only whatever is required. So don't overstep one's boundaries. So this is housekeeping rule you told us. First of all, in a formal manner, let me welcome the esteemed panelists for today's discussion. Mr. Mushtaq Mamun, who have joined us from Bangkok, Ms. Archana Datta, who is now in Delhi, Dharmesh, who is also in Delhi. Dharmesh ji, are you based in Delhi as well? And
no, I'm
yeah. And
Kerala.
Kerala, okay, yeah, from south of India, and Afia Aslam, who I believe should be at the airport on our way to Karachi from Islamabad. And then we will have Ms. Rumina Khurshid, who is current MP and former Parliamentary Secretary for Ministry of Climate Change. First of all, why did we thought to have this webinar on World Environment Day? And I think while all of us were talking of ecosystem restoration, one important modality, one important methodology, and one important practical step in ecosystem restoration is basically sustainable consumption and production. I wrote an op-ed for the news, one of the largest circulating paper in Pakistan, and actually I had tried to paint a scenario based on what we saw in India during this recent wave of COVID. And I remember these frantic calls for oxygen, and I also remember that how helplessness one was finding how helpless they were when they were watching their loved ones losing their lives because of availability of oxygen. And at that time, it was occurring to my mind, but we are also consuming the oxygen of this planet without knowing that perhaps a couple of decades or maybe more decades down the road, many of the places, they would become so unbreathable that people, they would have to perhaps use their own personal oxygen devices to breathe. And even now, during the smoggy days in Delhi and in Lahore, and of course, where Mushtaq Bhai is right now in Bangkok, and many other cities of the world, they're so polluted that they're simply unbreathable. And we still keep on consuming more, we keep on producing more, and we keep on polluting more. And this is certainly not the type of future that we want to leave to our future generations. And if we don't mend our ways, then perhaps there would be no difference between living on planet Earth or any other planet, because if there is no water available, if there is no oxygen available, if the temperature is not your human body friendly, so then if one has to wear those space suits, astronomical suits with oxygen, with temperature controlled, and or if one have to have this synthetic water, then we are turning actually the planet Earth into an uninhabited planet, which is not the reason we want to economically grow. So economic prosperity we are achieving, but we are achieving at a huge cost, and we are ignoring the important teachings which are given to us from the days of Jainism. So I was just thinking that why in Jainism we were asked to keep our nose and our mouth protected, covered all the time, and why they had to cover their feet with some cloth, because they never wanted to harm any of the natural creation. So right from Jainism to Islam and to all other modern religion, they keep on preaching about respecting the balance with the nature, living in harmony with nature, and that's what the report Our Common Future That told us in 1987, and this is exactly what a few months ago, Sir Partha ji, in his report, he told us that either we need to learn to live with nature, or sorry, there will be no nature to live in. And I think the way forward for us is, of course, sustainable consumption and production. Way forward is that we make the most optimum use of the resources available to us. The way forward is ecosystem restoration. The report becoming generation restoration, which is released by UNEP and FAO a few days ago. It gives us a couple of important messages, and one message is that $1 spent on natural restoration and nature's restoration, that would bring back $30 in return. So it's 1 to 30 ratio. Even from the business point of view, from any other financial point of view, this is a very, I think, lucrative proposition. The same report also tells us that we are our consumption is exceeding 1.6 times the nature can replenish. So, and this is at our current rate of consumption. So if we can keep on consuming, perhaps we will consume whatever the natural resources are, and being responsible adults, I think if we have to tell our future generation, our grandchildren, or if our grandchildren, they have to tell their grandchildren, and that how responsible their forefathers were. I think perhaps for our future generations, we have to show more responsibility. For our society, we have to show more responsibility. For our cities and our habitats, be they urban or rural, we have to show more responsibility. And for our countries and for planet Earth, we have to show more responsibilities. And for this, we need to resort to collective action. No single government, no single UN agency in this world can actually tackle this issue of exceeding consumption and scarce resources. So in order to maintain this balance, all of us, we have to contribute, we have to play our role. And today's meeting, we have 4 experts, Afia ji, Dharmesh, Mushtaq Saab, and Archana, and I look forward to learn from them how one can maintain that balance. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Dr. Saleri, for highlighting that we all need to play our role in individual capacity, in whatever capacity in which we are living. And let us welcome Ms. Romina Khurshid Alam, former Parliamentary Secretary on Climate Change and currently member National Assembly. She has joined us but switched off her camera. Maybe she will be switching on later on. And okay, so if Mushtaq Saab, there is slight change in the order of presentation. So if you are good to go, we may move to Afia Islam, as she would be heading towards the airport and would be joining later on anyways with mute mic and off camera to take question and answers, and later on join our discussion. So maybe we can move forward to her if that is okay with you.
Yeah, that's okay. Everything is fine as you decide. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So Ms. Afia Islam, now I would request you to please present on go slow on fast fashion. I think fashion is something which is very fascinating to almost all genders. And we do shopping every season without realizing its effects and its impact on climate and environment. So over to you for the rest of the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much, STPI, for having me. And thank you, Mushtaq Memon Saab, for giving me this space, because I have to leave in a little while. I wanted to stay for the whole duration. I'll keep listening in and, while I'm on the way. So I would actually sort of broaden it up. And I know it's very catchy to say fast fashion, But I think we need to talk about the consumption. It's a broader thing. It's not only about fashion, but it's about the things that we consume, the rate at which we consume, the processes that are used for the production of those consumer items that we have become so used to. And in the context of what Mr. Suleri was just mentioning, that we have to tell our children and our grandchildren, I think we also need to take a step back and see what our grandparents did and what our parents did. Well, maybe not parents' generation as much as our grandparents, because there was a word which had a lot of respect at that time, and that was thrift. That was, and there were these homilies which were passed down to generations, like waste not, want not. So do not take anything more than you need right now. Do not, fill your plate up more than you can eat, and do not hoard stuff. So those were these things that you would, they would be part of upbringing. And because of that, there was not as much waste as we see now, because the difference, even at the time of upbringing of children, is blurred between want and need. Like I remember we keep telling my children when they would say, I need to have ice cream, I need to have chips. I said, no, you want to have ice cream, you want to have chips, you don't need it. So that's just a small little anecdote, but basically this is what we need to draw the line at. What do we need and what do we want? Because sometimes when we go beyond our needs and we try to step into the domain of want, that is where the trends and the fashion and the things that are they take over our lives. And it is that concept that actually leads to a lot of waste, a lot of production, and because of the production cycle, the effluents that are generated. So yes, those can be controlled with better systems, and they are now being controlled. But I think it is a two-way thing. We cannot only ask the producers, the manufacturers to opt for better processes, green processes. That is a must that they need to do. We need to also take a look at our own standards and the compliances, as well as the actions and the responsibility and the penalties that are there in case of non-compliance to those standards, because only the implementation of the standards are going to ensure that our environment is not degraded. So that is one part of it. But the other part is behavior change. The other part connects to advocacy, that we have to tell people that just because it's cheap doesn't mean you have to throw a thing which is already working or wearable. You just throw it away and get something else. So it's very easy these days to go buy maybe 5 t-shirts of the same color for just a few rupees. And just because they are there, because it's a manufacturing process, makes mass production so easy and cheaper, economies of scale, and all those things play. But it's about your own control over your wants and your needs, and what you can consume rationally. And I feel we don't really talk about the stresses that are there and how damaging they are, or rather how much pressure they exert on the existing natural resources. And if maybe even at the stage of your school lessons and at other advocacy stages, if even just one point of virtual water is taught, it really makes you sit back and take notice of, take stock of what you're having. That even when you go and have a burger, you know how much water has been used to just produce that one little patty, and the kind of clothes that we wear, the processes are so, they bear so much pressure on the natural environment. So once that realization seeps in, then sometime, maybe somewhere down the road, we will be more careful about what we are eating, what we are consuming, how much. So it's also the question of how much. And the wasteful practices have become a part and parcel of the ease of availability, as well as the accessibility of disposable cash. So that, I think we need to draw a balance somewhere, where you do not even if you can afford something, it doesn't mean you have to go and get it. And the word that I used for our grandparents' generation, thrift was that they only used, or they only went and bought what they needed to. They didn't go buying things just because they looked nice or just because they had money in their pocket. So it doesn't sound very scientific to say it like this, but then behavior change may be a science, but it is also the way you interact with people, the way you become role models in your homes or in your workplace, and also how the role modeling trickles down from the thought leaders and the public officials. Because if you see them consuming something, so these austerity measures and the preaching about using less, it doesn't really have much attention, or it doesn't really seep down into the national psyche that this is what we need to stop with the waste, and because they are doing it, so why should we stop? Unfortunately, we don't see that kind of role modeling enough. There are very, very few people whom you can see making a very, very conscious effort to send that message out through their actions. So unless that happens at each and every step where we interact with people, we interact with the newer generation. So I think that is something we need to do. The fast fashion is also a part of this whole cycle. Fast fashion is also about the availability of cheaper materials, cheaper clothes, and their durability is such that people get tired of using the same thing because they don't wear out. They are, even after 20 years, the t-shirt probably you bought will still be as wearable. But because you don't want to wear something for such a long time, you get sick and tired of it, to throw it away. Now, if in our society, it's easier to at least pass those things on to people who cannot afford. But because we are talking on a broader level, and not just about societies where there are people who would be grateful to receive, maybe a hand-me-down, we need to understand that there is a lot of waste that is generated in societies where that habit is not there, or that tradition is not there to hand me down. And there you see a lot of waste. You see these landfills full of things which are absolutely workable. And at that time I wonder, and by that I mean also consumer durables. You will see fridge, televisions, etc. thrown out just because that's an old model. We keep changing our cell phones to every new models. Why? Not because it's not working anymore, but because, well, it's an old model. And earlier it used to be, don't fix it until it's broke. It was that kind of a thing, that you use the thing until its lifespan. We don't do that. So fast fashion is basically a small window onto the consumption patterns that are there, which are stressing our environment out because of the resource pressures. We are taking so much from the earth to be able to produce the things that we want to consume, that we are outstripping its ability to heal itself, to regenerate. And this year's theme, as well as the focus on regeneration of the ecosystem, I hope will draw the attention of people towards the understanding of how it can be done and why it must be done. And some people also, they feel that they've come to that tipping point that, well, nothing can be done anymore, so why not have a good time, and why not live a good life? No, it can be done. And I'll just give a small example of how ecosystems can regenerate. And if I'm sure everybody is able to look up examples that I quote there. If you look at what Chernobyl was, what a disastrous place, no human life, no animal life, no plant life because of the nuclear disaster. If you go and look at that now, the wildlife has returned. There's a thriving, flourishing forest over there. And there are actually tours of people who go and visit that place. Why? Because after the disaster, first, of course, nobody could venture into that area because of the radiation danger. But it was left alone. It was left alone for a long enough time for that radiation danger to subside and for the earth to heal, for the environment to heal and come back on its own before the human interaction had made that place inhabitable. So we need to keep our lifestyle at a pace where our consumptions do not outstrip the ability of nature to heal itself and regenerate. So ecosystem regeneration, I think, has to be the mantra now, and that flows not just from the biodiversity point of view and from other points of view, also this fast fashion and overconsumption, I think falls right in that domain. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Ms. Afia, for really stressing on what we actually need and what we actually want. And I think this is where everyone really need to, decide and really think about that we are racing in a wrong direction. I think we need to stop to this competition of fashion, which is very fast. We need to really go slow on that.
Okay, I will now beg leave. I have to leave for the airport, but I will be listening in. I'll put my connect for my telephone now.
Sure.
I'll be on mute, and I won't put my video on until the question answer session. Things keep coming, and if there is anything directed at me, then I will respond. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mushtaq, for giving your space to me.
You reminded me the ghazal, wo kagaz ki kashti, wo barish ka pani, wo पीतल के छल्लों के तोहफे, वो टूटी हुई चूड़ियों की निशानी. So that's the life.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Bye. So with this, we would now move to Dr. Mushtaq Memon, towards you. And for the benefit of everyone, let me share again that Dr. Mushtaq Memon is project manager of Switch Asia PRAC, if I'm pronouncing right, and he will be presenting on demystifying sustainable consumption and production. And to give a little bit background of the working, UNEP has been promoting principle of sustainable consumption and production and resource efficiency through advocacy, science policy interface, convening and multi-stakeholder engagement. UNEP Regional Office for Asia and Pacific based in Bangkok is also implementing European Union funded Switch Asia Regional Policy Advocacy Component, which is our PAC project that promotes the uptake of sustainable consumption and production practices in Asia and strengthening a dialogue on green economy and SAP at regional, sub-regional and national level. So we thought that this is good opportunity on this World Environment Day to share around sustainable consumption and production practices here on Facebook Live and Twitter Live and YouTube Live with the wider audience in Pakistan as well. So over to you, Dr. Mushtaq Memon.
Thank you. So thank you. Mariam has put very difficult terminologies and makes the sustainable lifestyles really complex. So I will unpack few of the things for you. But before getting to those unpacking, let me just briefly mention that, okay, I have two heads. So one is in the United Nations Environment Program, Regional Coordinator for Resource Efficiency, which also covers the sustainable consumption and production as one of the key areas. And as you might know, under the Sustainable Development Goals, the UN agencies, they are the lead agencies on the different goals, suppose WHO on health and so on. So United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, is leading on SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production. And if you deep dive in SDG 12, on the first part, you look on the resource efficiency, that how much resources are required to produce anything per se, whether it be the water resources, energy, metals, and so on, so resource efficiency. Then it moves to the waste, that how much like a food waste, plastics, hazardous waste is there. Then to correct that part, we have a 6 indicator on the sustainability reporting by the industries and so on. But then we go upstream, and then 12.7 is a public procurement. So sustainable public procurement is a way to push, because through sustainable public procurement, the government has a lot of leverage. Suppose in India, when they were introducing LED bulbs, and it was very expensive, so the government pushed for, I don't remember exact number, 3 million or so, to get the bulbs instead of 100 rupee to 20 rupee. So with the public procurement push, the many items, because in the mass production can be cheaper, which are environmentally or green items and green products. Then we move to the 12.8, which is sustainable lifestyles. And that's what today I'll be briefly touching on. Then it goes to sustainable tourism and so on. So basically this whole point is that when we talk about the sustainable consumption and production, is all about the whole value chain, from the extraction of the resources to the production of the products, to the retailing and consumers or services, and then post-consumer waste, and how to close the loop as local as possible to avoid the leakages or environmental impacts of the production and consumption, and also to regenerate back the resources to reduce the pressure on the natural resources. So in a nutshell, this is about the sustainable consumption and production. So then European Union, they have been supporting for more than now 15 years, this under Switch Asia, to mainstream the sustainable consumption and production in different sectors, whether it be food sector, plastics, textiles, whether it be the tourism and transport, energy, housing, you name it. So basically, this EU support comes in a big way, but biggest part is through grants. And I also understand in Pakistan, there are a few of the good grants they are working on with the Switch Asia. So again, many civil society organizations can look for those grants, which are like advertised every year and directly from the Brussels. And so basically you can look on that. Then the second part is SCP facility, which provides supports to the national level. And in Pakistan, they are providing support on the plastic waste management. Then the third part, which is under UNEP, where I am a project manager, is looking on the regional advocacy, as I say, that on the public procurement, on the sustainable food system, sustainable lifestyles, and so on. So we work with at the regional level with the regional fora or sub-regional level, like in ASEAN, the SACIP for South Asia. And then we have some of the support for the national level, either to provide support on the SDG 12, whether be the reporting, monitoring, indicators, or roadmaps for the sustainable consumption and production or a specific sector. So that is there, and so thanks to the EU for that. Now coming to the UNEP, as UNEP is, as I mentioned, the leading on the SDG 12, so we have a quite intensive work in all the indicators, whether it be the 12.1, resource efficiency, 12.2, or the 10-year framework, which again hosted by UNEP, 12.3 on the food waste and food loss, 12.4 on the waste management, recycling, 12.5 the hazardous waste, 12.6 the sustainability reporting, and I mentioned 7 public procurement, 8 is on the sustainable lifestyles, and 9 tourism, and so on. So basically today, let me, because of taking the advantage of India, let me share with you a small presentation on 12.8, that's a sustainable lifestyles, which is very, I think, relevant for this today's session. So can I get the right share, please, screen, if possible? Otherwise, I can send my PPT.
Yes, it is very much possible. Umair, please give access to Dr. Mushtaq Memon Saab.
Okay, so today, in taking advantage of Afedi, I continue to talk about the sustainable lifestyles, that how you can create a bigger advocacy around sustainable lifestyles to support the whole value chain of sustainable consumption and production. Not yet. So once it's done, let me know, please, then I will share. So let's start with that thinking that what does it mean by sustainable lifestyles? Are we talking about going back to on quality of life? Are we going to give up on the, okay, I can't share now, let me see. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, good. So basically, as I mentioned, to empower the people for the better and lighter living. So it's not about losing on the quality of life, rather improving the quality of life, because the quality of life is about the social environment, the physical environment around you, and it also includes the physical possession of the goods or the products or the access to the services and so on, but also it is surrounding. Suppose if we have more cars on the roads, the air pollution, so the happiness of the cars is marginalized with the air pollution there, for example, or the heat island impact to have more air conditioning, and that creates further vicious circle and so on. So when you're looking on the sustainable living and lifestyles, you look on the physical and natural boundaries beyond, like universe and everything, earth and so on, then socio-technical conditions, our personal situations. And as I say that because, okay, some people can afford the car, some people cannot afford the car, but the air pollution hits mostly the people who are walking on the roads per se. Then how you create the equity. So that's where this taxes and everything comes in, like congestion charges in Singapore or London and so on. And those are distributed to improve the air quality. So the equity is there. And then the basic needs and desires, and how those basic needs are generated, how the desires are generated, what's the role of the advertisement, what's the role of the peer, what's the role of the social pressures and so on. So we live in a society where we get all these things. And then how we create our own self that has our own decision making for our own good, and that good basically consolidate with the societal good and with the universal good and so on. So that is the most important way to look at how we can really think aloud and think not only for ourselves, but also ourselves putting in the framework of a society, in a city, in a country, and as a global village. Now, when we look on the products, that what we buy, as Afyaji was mentioning on the mobile phones, where, the new models and everything, how the needs and desires are defined, as I already mentioned, of the different pressures and so on, the work-related need and so forth. So then it comes really to see that how you are looking on that, what you need, and if you buy that product, how it will serve your purpose and how it will affect you and the society. As I say, car, even like e-waste from the mobile phones, the food waste and so on. So what we say order right, for example, then you have the looking on the slowdowns, but it does not mean that you are like giving up on the quality of life. You are rather enjoying the same level, because as I say, basic needs are there, the appreciation that comes in, that you create the groups, they really appreciate you as an environmentalist and so on. So that is there. And then finally also to look on that the products which are not really there to serve a lot of our purpose, but which create a lot of problems, like a disposables, we will come there. So to dish the disposables, you can look on that plastic bags, the plastic straws, the small sachet of the shampoos and everything, the small like packs of the chips, the juices. First of all, you can see that you enjoy the tea still in the conventional cups or the glasses or the pottery and all this, rather than in plastic cups. Same, you enjoy the dal, you enjoy your meals in the proper utensils. I don't know how many of people are really enjoying the taste while walking to having the chips and then throwing the wrappers away. The juice, again, when it comes in the proper nice glass. And also you enjoy the food, everything with the friends, with the family sitting around. So that is the point, that how you really reshape your life, which was really the way you make your food more delicious for yourself. You make it more worthy for yourself and your friends and family to talk and all these things, rather than looking at the mobile phone and walking and having the chips and so on. So basically, if you look on those disposables, you can easily ditch them. That is very important to look on that. And then now came COVID. And as we saw the lockdowns, the takeaways, home orders, a lot of single-use plastics coming, even if we don't need how to order right, and how to really make it happen that you don't need that those things even if you are ordering at home. And then there are some of the challenges comes with the fear that more wrapping is better for safety and so on, which is not yet proven in a way. So and also the single use, like even here in Bangkok, many Starbucks, everything, they wanted to bring this again, the single use, because they thought is COVID may come with the reusables and all these things, which is not, as we are working very closely with many and haven't seen any yet research on that. So basically, when you're still in the COVID situation, when you have a lot of e-commerce, when you have a lot of takeaways, when you have a lot of masks, gloves and everything, how you really design that, that is very important to look on that. So basically, UNEP, as we are promoting a lot at the good life goals and the anatomy of action, and there's a lot of reports and everything is available. So I would suggest that you may like to have a look on the sustainable lifestyle, huge work in the UNEP. And if you need anything, you can contact me, or you can contact Archana ji, she is sitting here also. So thank you very much. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mushtaq Memon. Dr. Mushtaq Memon is very capable, and he just initially told that Mariam has made some complicated terms, and he unpacked it more complicatedly. That is on a lighter note. You very well mentioned around sustainability in very easy terms that which are understandable from all the followers joined us online over here as well. Thank you for that. Maybe I will now move to Ms. Archana Datta, who is very actively looking at this program, to share some of her experiences in her individual capacity. That what really South Asia and particularly India, or maybe in the context of Pakistan, you would like to speak around sustainable consumption and production practices. So Archana, you're open to speak on the topic from your heart.
Thanks, Mariam, and I believe there are far more experienced experts on panel to share their views and their knowledge with the audience. So I'll be very brief. Dr. Memon has already talked a lot about sustainable lifestyle. As Dr. Sileri was mentioning earlier, I think with COVID-19 pandemic, it is very clear that nature has sent us the strong message that we must find ways to tackle many pressures that we are placing on natural world. And it is clearer that we need to fundamentally rework our relationship with nature and redesign our societies in a way that we live in equity with the planet and thrive together. This UN decade for ecosystem restoration, it certainly calls for a transformative way of working, transformative way of producing stuff, transformative way of changing our individual perspectives, individual consumption patterns, and make it a global moment and recognize that restoration cannot be achieved without participation of the whole society. A key measure for success of this UN decade will certainly be the work that the government policies are going to do, but as well as how individual behavior change can happen. As Afia ji was mentioning, I think conservation in our tradition. South Asian countries, we've always been frugal with our consumption. I was talking to one of the professors in National Institute of Fashion Technology, which is a premier fashion institute in India. And she was telling me that some of the good practices, like people, some of our elderlies, they never used to, whenever the collar of the shirt was torn or something, they used to go to a tailor and flip the collar, and the shirt was completely new, brand new. So I think we need to go back to our cultural roots and stop aping the West. I mean, I know the young generation, we are influenced by a lot of the stuff which is happening around us. We want new things. We would like to have a new cloth every day, wearing a new garment every day, a fashionable garment in which we can post our pictures on Facebook. It should be there. I mean, I'm not saying that youth should certainly, I mean, youth has the responsibility for the degradation which their previous generations have already made, I think. But then youth today is equally smart. I believe there are so many innovative solutions which are coming up. A lot of stuff which is happening. They're more aware of their surroundings. They're more aware of what is happening to nature. And under Switch Asia, as Dr. Memon was mentioning, we are organizing a lot of activities which promote sustainable lifestyles. We are doing a lot of capacity building programs. In fact, one of our flagship activities is the organization of the annual Leadership Academy. And if there are any young professionals who are interested in attending this academy, there is a thorough application process. You should be applying. And it's on variety of subjects. Like, for example, last year we talked about circular economy and the importance of behavior change and communication aspects in mainstreaming circular economy. Also, we've just launched with the Asian Institute of Technology offline course on circular economy and sustainable lifestyles. There are a lot of resources which we are producing and which are there for general audience to go and check and understand this paradigm better. I can only end by quoting the great Mahatma Gandhi. The world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And I think with that principle in mind, we can certainly grow in harmony with nature. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana, for speaking with the context of youth. And taking you in between was the purpose that we have voices of youth as well. And I'm so glad that I'm taking more females on this panel than men. No offense, please. I have been joined by Ms. Bharati Chaturvedi. She is a very dear friend of us and very active environmentalist. She has Chintan, India. And these days she is living in Canada, but she is Indian. She likes to call it that way. And thank you so much, Bharati, for joining us. It's good to see you again. And we have been following whoever is added with Bharati on social media. She shares time and again her personal experiences with sustainable consumption when it comes to, wearing something or anything which is sustainable. And she's, I think, during COVID, she has saved environment a lot in her individual capacity, and maybe inspired some of her social media followers as well. Thank you so much, Bharati. I would request you to please speak on the consumption in post-COVID era. I mean, what is next when it comes to sustainable consumption and production patterns? Bharati, you are muted. And
now, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much, for including me. I'm really very honored, and I'm so happy to see all of you. And like you said, I'm in Canada, but I'm one of those people who's, paying house rent in Delhi, but have come here and got stuck because of COVID. And I'm one of those many people in the world who are trying to work from home in a different time zone, and missing all my colleagues and missing being in India. And I'm really thrilled to be part of this conversation. And I heard a little bit of Archana before me, and I think think it's a great last sentence that she said, where she quotes Gandhi about there being enough for everybody's need. I think fundamentally at this time, post-COVID, during COVID, actually, we had this whole conversation about how clean the environment had become. And it was a very global conversation, and it was a very interesting conversation, because many people said, oh my God, the skies are clean. In fact, the data showed that in Delhi, which is one of the most polluted cities, and I know all of you here will appreciate that, because all of us have worked together on air pollution. We found that there was, in fact, a 15% drop in nitrous oxides, which is due to vehicular pollution. There was the average PM2 was just 35, which is just something like a quarter of what it is normally. So clearly there were great benefits. But on the other hand, there was a great lot of greed, because in fact, poaching more or less doubled during that period. And so to me, in many ways, COVID showed us a mirror to the consumptive aspects of our lives. And it showed us, how we can restore ecosystems, but also how important dramatically shifting our consumption levels are. And I think for all of us in South Asia, what has to be at the core of our consumption is equity. Because we have people who are poor, people who've broken out of poverty, and we have to make sure that they don't slip back into poverty. And I'm saying slip back because I think just a couple of weeks ago, we had, Cyclone Taute on the West Coast, coming in from the Arabian Sea. And we all know how much destruction this costs. And we know that there's been a huge increase in cyclones, partly due to increase in temperatures linked with climate change, which obviously for us means that the poor all along the coasts, whether they're fishing communities or whether they're other kinds of people who for centuries lived alongside and who intimately understand coastal ecosystems, they're losing their assets, they're losing whatever they had, and they're being pushed down into poverty. So on one hand, we have climate change. On the other hand, we have COVID, and our path forward has to be around sustainable but equitable consumption. Because if we reduce consumption, we also, at this point in our development, have to make sure that the poorest woman in our countries in South Asia consume more equitably, whether they consume better quality calories, whether they consume more water, which they often need because they live in extraordinarily deprived conditions, or whether they actually consume other kinds of resources. And in order to do that, in order to be a more equal society, those are the shifts. I'll take a quick example around the kinds of things we're seeing right now around consumption globally, the building back. I think there's a whole conversation globally about how shall we build back green. And, wealthy countries, like Germany are saying we're going to invest, I think they're investing almost 2.5 billion euros. I mean, just try to wrap your mind around that money in renovating buildings. Now, that's no surprise. Germany is a big place for, it's one big architectural hub. And they're saying that will reduce energy consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, and so on. But on the other hand, countries like ours, we have to really look at a reduction in consumption in a very fundamental way. And in many ways, it's very complex because we haven't had the development paths, say, of Germany, which has already, used all its coal and created all that pollution and reached this level of that it has of high development. So we are stuck with a lot of poor people. We are stuck with a large number of a whole lot of development that we yet have to get done. So a couple of big ideas here. First of all, I think talking of India, India has actually launched the electric vehicle policy, and about 30% of the vehicles are expected to, be EV by 2030. And that's very exciting, but it's also a big challenge because I think we have to really look at where this EV goes. It has to go in public transport, because if we're all going to take, really luxurious electric vehicles made by some of the luxury brands of this world, then that's still going to consume a lot of steel. It's going to consume a lot of other kinds of, resources. And that's not sustainable, because then you have to go into bauxite mining, then that increases greenhouse gases. And I think all of us understand that vicious circle. And our job is to move to a virtuous cycle, which will happen through through ideas like shared economies, where public transport is very critical, where building communities is very critical. Many of us will remember, and I know in Pakistan, there are still robust urban middle-class communities which are still sharing economies, where people will still share surplus, will share transport, and that building back community is vital. It's a foundational level activity if we want to do circular economies and sustainable consumption. Because if as communities we don't learn to share, if we don't learn to repair, if we don't learn to put those systems in our communities, how do you expand? And that needs both a policy shift, but it also needs practice shift and community action. And I'll give you a really small example, which is just, cobblers, which we call mochis right here. So those people are part of the repair economy. But at this point in our economic trajectory, there are very few of them left. Those skills are also dying because the new generation feels that there's neither money nor respect in that job. They don't have access to credit. But these are the people who keep our material flows, extend our material life cycles of the products we use. And they reuse a lot of products in repair. And repair is a very critical thing. We have people who repair our electronics, but yet we throw away cell phones and keep using new ones. Though COVID has reduced that because we've really not had the opportunity to go and shop with that gay abandon as we used to. So I think putting those people, enabling them market access locally, giving them space, advertising what they do. These are very critical parts that both policy and planning have a role to play in. And because people cannot access these kinds of services unless they're available locally, nobody is going to travel far beyond where you live or work, to give a pair of, to repair your watch, for example, for those who still wear watches, and so on. I think I won't take too much time, but because there are so many of you in Pakistan, and we know how important fashion is, and how amazing, how culturally embedded that is, and how many traditional skills come into play, whether it's actually sewing garments, whether it's embroidery, whether it's preserving fundamental cultural aspects through fashion. I think it's very important for us to fashion a completely new way of looking at clothes and circular economy and sustainable fashion, because increasingly as people come into more money, the first thing is you say, I want a larger wardrobe. But the idea is not only to have less clothes which are easier to recycle or which will degrade, but equally have less, because even cotton does have a footprint. We understand that. All of us who so love clothes, we know that we have to have slow fashion, which means you wear the same thing. But that's going to be very difficult unless there's a movement, because it's difficult to make these mindsets without a shift from linear to circular. And that whether it's through clothes exchanges, whether it's technical inputs to start recycling clothes that are not biodegradable. Chintan, we did a study a couple of years ago where we said in 48 hours, what is the amount of polyester and synthetic materials and textiles that come out of the biggest landfill. And we paid people who were working on that landfill to pick it out. And we paid them the same rate as plastics, which is very lucrative. And we got 3 tons, which just tells you the amount. And that was just what was available on the top, which would be the last 1 week's textiles, and not even perfectly picked out. So it tells you how much we're landfilling. And needless to add, there's a whole chain there. Synthetic clothes, our fleece, our polyester has fibers which go into our rivers through our sewage systems, enter our food chain, destroy biodiversity, enter the oceans, the Arabian Sea. So I will end here by concluding that there are a couple of 2 or 3 things. First of all, we do have to look at equity. Climate change is making people poorer, but our sustainable consumption can create jobs. India has well over 1 lakh jobs already in renewable energy. There'll be several more in electric vehicles, and there are thousands and lakhs of jobs already in the repair economy. The challenge is to frame it like that. Secondly, we really have to change our mindsets and stand up and take a stance as consumers. And thirdly, I think because of the way that the poor are getting poorer and unable to consume, particularly because of climate change when they lose their assets so much, I think we really have to look at building in plans. Literally for India, I keep thinking we need district level plans across all our 70 coastal districts, because without that there will be a very skewed consumption. And even if we make our consumption more geared towards renewable, less reliant on other kinds of energy, we will still have a large number of people dropped out, which in South Asia is not our model, because we are still fighting battles which rich nations which are very, very energy consuming and greenhouse gas emitting, such as the United States and Canada. They've crossed all those borders, and we haven't. And so our battles are different. And I leave you with those thoughts. Thank you for including me.
Thank you, Ms. Bharati, for very briefly touching upon almost very important aspects of life where consumption is not really sustainable. And I think post-COVID time, we really need to think about that, especially change of mindset, which is, of course, very slow process. It won't happen overnight. But I think such discussions and more awareness raising, and although when it comes to awareness raising, I have to make this point that although many educated people and many even not educated people, they are aware that what is happening to the environment through observation and through studies and everything. But even then, we are not realizing, due to certain taboos, I must call it, which we have developed over time, that when it comes to new collection, every time with every season when it comes in, that the campaign, social media campaign online is so lavish that every young person, and not only young person, but people from every age and every gender wants to buy those and really post digitally and
absolutely. Mariam, one of the things is, and I'm so honored to be able to say this at SDPI, because I think you guys think ahead of the curve all the time, is that all of this has happened because we have leaped at these opportunities. So not only do we have things like planned obsolescence in fashion, that ye kya aapne dal liya, this is totally out, what's wrong with you? But we have to stand up to it, and not only should the market control us, but we should be controlling the market. That's the big shift we want.
That's right. And I think discussion like these around sustainable consumption is very important to carry out over time, I guess. And since these days during COVID, everyone is, in their homes, they would be connected with us digitally. So more and more information and discussion should be disseminated online. And I believe we should also take those brands on board for their awareness raising. Maybe one day they may realize, but their business would be at stake. But I guess that would take time. Perhaps we would have to work on the other side, which is consumer side.
Mariam, I'll just come in quickly. A lot of the big brands have understood that their business will be at stake, and expensive brands like COS in the UK, for example, have started an online thing called COS Secondhand. So they are saying, instead of anything else, sell your secondhand clothes to us and we will again sell them, so that we can make money at two levels, from our fresh clothes and our secondhand. That's a big trend coming up, though not in our part of the world, because we don't have that yet.
That is great.
If I may come in.
Yes,
I may
please.
come in for a while. At UNEP also, I mean, a lot of sustainable textile and circular textile work we are driving at global level, also at a country level. And in fact, in India also, there are these new business models which are coming up, which are basically rental models. So there are platforms where you can rent a dress instead of buying a dress. So those things are coming up. There are young designers who are coming up with beautiful designs, and they offer you an upgrade on that design. So you don't have to, I mean, once you've worn and you don't want the same thing to be worn again, they'll offer you an upgrade, they'll do some patchwork, they'll make it completely different. So those solutions are coming up. I think we just need to open our eyes, and a lot of things are already happening.
Thank you, Archana, for sharing this information. And that reminds me, few of our celebrities during this COVID time, they are selling their branded clothes online to help others, and also promoting, really generating a debate to their followers that we don't really need to buy more clothes, because every dress with every occasion, it just goes to their wardrobe. They don't use it again and again, and that is not sustainable. I think that is a big shift itself, even if that change is to some level, and with some outlets only, and with some minds only. I think it will change generation a lot. Bharati was mentioning about plastic pollution as well, and how Chintan is really contributing to that as well. And that takes me to our next speaker, Dharmesh Shah. He would be speaking on plastic pollution and in relation with circular economy. We all know that due to plastic pollution, our ecosystem is not really, it's really in bad shape, and it's not improving. Plastic in marine life, it causes damage to marine life. On land, it also is very dangerous for birds, for mammals, for humans. And it chokes our streets and our natural water pathways, which are supposed to be constructed for natural water flows whenever it rains. So I would now request Ramesh Shah, you to please speak on this topic, that how really we can make this sustainable consumption and production. But before that, I also want to share one news that since Pakistan is the global host for World Environment Day, here in Islamabad, with the collaboration of, I'm forgetting the name of that private company, they have put a recycling machine over here, and on that people would be able to recycle plastic bottles, and on that they would get a coupon on which they would get some percentage off from KFC and other, food outlets. So with this news, I would request Ramesh Shah to please proceed with your topic.
Thank you so much, Mariam. I hope you can hear me. I'm joining from a kind of a remote village, and there's a lot of rain here. So there might be some connectivity issues.
Yes,
so I might...
The presentation is visible.
Okay, so I'll be turning off my video. It's nice to see Bharti here. I mean, it's really nice to see and hear from her. Pleasant surprise. We have worked together, and we share a lot of the philosophy that she spoke about, and having worked with many of the communities that she was talking about. I think I'll just that's a nice segue into the whole issue of plastic pollution and circular economy. Now, this is this idea of circular economy, that's a buzzword, and we're hearing a lot about it throughout the world. Especially, the European Union has been talking about it quite a bit. I would like to start with this slide, and this is the diagram that has come to define the modern quest for sustainability. The symmetry of the nested loops, as you see there. It's very pleasing to the eye, but it also promises to be answer to the biggest ecological crisis of our times, overconsumption and waste, which a lot of you spoke about. And I think without a doubt, it is the biggest issue that we face as a civilization right now. We're consuming too much and we're wasting too much. But anthropologically speaking, waste can be a resource and a source of tremendous knowledge, I believe. It is how we have learned about our own past. We have the stuff that was left behind by our ancestors gave us a glimpse into their lives, and we learned how they lived their lives. But waste in the modern age has become a symptom of a system in crisis. And we are all here and we're all talking about sustainable consumption. And the fact that our forests and our rivers and our oceans are all dying is basically a symptom of a much larger crisis. And waste is a problem. The circular economy diagram that you see on the screen right now, it's premised on three fundamentals. It's the reuse cascades, which you see on the left, the small loops, which is nothing but downcycling of materials. So from a PET bottle, when you make a T-shirt, or you put you make stuffing for a fleece jacket, which Bharti was talking about. These things were bottles once, and then they've been converted into fiber for different applications, which is downcycling of material. And then you have the second concept in circular economy, which is long-lasting cycles, which is extending the product life by making it more durable. And we're seeing some of the companies adopting this philosophy by not making things for the dump, but and making them durable enough so they last longer than their competitors. And the final thing is closing the loop, which is maintaining the pure flow of resources. So far, it's like food to compost to food. So far, only biological cycles have perfected that whole closed loop system. We've been trying to mimic that, but so far, I think it has been a limited success. So to drive the point home, I think this is what circular economy aims at. Self-sustaining system mimicking nature. And this is this particular scientist, David Latimer. He first planted this, put this plant in this bottle in 1960s, and he then watered it in 1972, and then it shut it tight, and the plant has been surviving since then on its own resources. And this is how natural systems are. They do not waste. All the waste are resources, and there's no concept of waste. It's a human invention, and circular economy aims to achieve this. But can it is a larger question, and which is what I will be talking about in a bit. The idea of circular economy is not new. It has been in the academic domain for about 2 decades. In 2002, the author Michael Brognader, he was a German chemist who advocated for better industrial design in order to reduce waste. He wrote this book called Cradle to Cradle, which had a lot of ideas about how better industrial design can lead to reduction in waste. Now, I've chosen to use this image because the book itself was made of upcycled plastic, and it is practically indestructible. So, the image next to it shows that it is a plastic book and it cannot be destroyed by water. So that brings me to the whole idea of circular economy. Is it a magic bullet? This is the crux of the debate. And EU and several countries, I said, like in Asia, in India, there's a whole EU-India circular economy deal that's going on. They've developed positions and policies on circular economy, touting it as the future. But as a policy analyst, I have to scrutinize policy ideas on their claims versus ground reality. Now, the material flows into the economy, what we call anthropogenic metabolism, which is how much material and energy the human society uses. Every year, just to give you an idea, we transform about 100 billion tons of raw material into products globally. And less than a quarter of these become buildings, cars, or other long-lasting things. and less than 10% of that recycles back into the economy. So this is the way the economy, global economy, consumes right now. And the consumption by OECD in this case, global economy is destined to double and quadruple its consumption of various resources. As you can see the slide on the extreme right, the non-metallic minerals consumption is going to quadruple from between now and 2060. And this is stupendous because, you know, we have this projection on one side where we are seeking bottomless growth. And on the other side, we're also looking at circulating these back into the environment. So how do these things reconcile is a much larger question. Now, the idea of circular economy, what exactly is circular economy? Now, if I were to take some quotes from people who have been promoting the idea of circular economy, one of them is the Commissioner of the European Environment Commissioner, Janis Potočnik. He says the prosperity in the world of finite resources is what circular economy's aim is. So it is basically, it does not aim to end growth. It aims to bend how we do things in harmony with nature. But is it really possible? Now, when we talk about circular economy, we hit our first limit, in terms of the philosophy of circular of economy itself and economic growth as we know it, because I think growth and circularity and the idea of sustainability cannot coexist. And it's a very strong statement, I know that, but I think it has to be said because the idea of circular economy, there is a whole idea of rebound effects, circular economy rebound. And the idea is that when circular economy activities, which have lower per unit production impacts, also cause increased level of production. So efficient use of resources, in effect, will bring prices down, which will increase consumption, hence demanding more primary production. So what it argues, and this is, these are researchers who have tried to understand how the economy works and how efficiency has in fact led to more consumption. So which could replicate into a circular economy model, because we are trying to fit the circular economy idea into the current economic system, which is very risky. The second major issue is complexity of materials. And this is something that we've seen, and we've been hearing from a lot of advocates who have been working on plastic issues around the world. We just cannot recycle our way out of this problem. This is especially true for electronics and the majority of plastics we use today. For instance, there was a recent study on the Fairphone. Fairphone is a very modern, eco-friendly and labor-friendly phone that was in use in Europe for several. I mean, even now it's actually one of the most popular phones. And the smartphone designed to be recyclable and have a longer lifespan. The aim of the company was to make something that was designed for a longer life, and it was supposed to be recyclable. But a study that was done showed that the use of synthetic materials like microchips and batteries made closing the loop almost impossible. So effectively, only 30% of the materials used in a Fairphone can be practically recycled. And a study on LED lights also yielded similar results. So there is no, downcycling is a major, because you have a lot of these materials are very, very complex and very, very difficult to recycle. The second issue is inputs exceeding the outputs. So just over the last century, the use of resources grew by 1400%. So from 7 gigatons in 1900s to 78 gigatons in 2010 to 100 gigatons, as I mentioned earlier, in 2020. And there's an average growth of about 3% per year. This is more than double the rate of population growth as we know it. Now, growth makes circular economy impossible. even if all raw materials were recycled and all recycling was 100% efficient, the amount of used material that can be recycled will always be smaller than the material needed for growth. And to compensate for that, we have to continuously extract more resources. So we will continue depending on natural resources for our needs, even with a 100% recycling target. And the last issue with circular economy is resource accumulation. Now, considerable segment of all resources, which I mentioned earlier, third of the total, are either recycled or incinerated or dumped. They are neither recycled, incinerated, or dumped. They are accumulated in buildings, infrastructures, and consumer goods, which are embedded. These resources are embedded in these various uses. So, for example, so as long as we keep accumulating raw materials, the closing of the material life cycle remains an illusion, according to me. And even for materials that are in principle recyclable. So, for example, if recycled metals can only supply 36% of the yearly demand, according to a study of new metal right now, even if metal has relatively high recycling capacity, about 70%, we will still need to extract new metals, because I think a lot of these resources are being embedded into uses that accumulated for centuries, if not decades. I would like to kind of conclude by showing a couple of slides, and this is especially, this image is from a 1972 paper. This is a graph from a paper, Limits to Growth, by a team of scientists headed by a lady, Donnell Meadows. And in their review of the prevalent economic model of growth vis-a-vis the availability of natural resources, this graph is basically an output of a computer modeling system using the idea of system dynamics. And it highlights the various interrelated sectors, if you can see, and their peaks and their responses to declining resources over the century. And what it shows towards the end in 2100 is a very bleak picture, where we see a complete drop in all these various elements, including population growth. And what it shows is that there's an inextricable link between our natural capital and our civilization, which we cannot ignore. I would like to leave you with this question, because I've posed several issues with the circular economy model, and certainly it continues to be a challenge, and I think we need to strive harder to look at newer models. But I think at the crux of it is this image. If a tub is overflowing, what would your first intervention be? Would be to turn off the tap. And what we're doing now is trying to scoop the water out, which is very, very inefficient. Ultimately, the idea of circular economy would perhaps make some sense if it also aims at contracting the circle, but it cannot coexist with unlimited growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dharmesh, for critically analyzing concept of circular economy around consumption, and leaving us with the thought that if tub is overflowing, what we have to do. And naturally, the first thing would be, if I'm inside that tub, I would turn off the tap because I want to save my life. But we really have to think that instead of just thinking that what is saving my life is equally, it's also important to think that the water on which I'm dependent on for multiple purposes, that also needs to be saved, and that is wasting. So thank you very much for a very elaborative presentation around this, and leaving us with a very meaningful thought. We are running a bit late from our agenda, so I would request now Ms. Rumina Khurshid Alam, who is a member National Assembly and is former parliamentary secretary on climate change. She has done quite a lot on climate change when she was sitting in a ministry, but that's not enough. Even she's not sitting in a ministry right now, she's still doing a lot around climate change and human rights. We all know that. And ma'am, over to you for special remarks on this day.
Thank you so very much. Very good evening, good morning, good afternoon from the different parts of the world. First of all, I want to really highly feel it's a great moment for me to wish Switch Asia, STPI as always. You guys are tremendous. You guys are always great. And then EU who's funding or supporting. And then, of course, a great thanks to you. Because of you guys, today I got an opportunity to saw one of my friend, Miss Bharti. And I must want to say, no matter where, how far we are, I think the agendas, the issues are same. And as we all know, the world is now, we all talking about the global warming, global and globe. So we all are very near, our issues are very same. And really, it's great to listen from all the learned people. Although I'm not that learned as all of you guys are, all are having great expertise in their own fields and in the work. And it's a great, great learning. Thank you so very much for putting me in that. And here, like I was listening and I was going through with a few things. I tried to, absorb as much as I can for my learning capacity as well. We all talk about the recycling, about the eco. I think that nature has given us a good lesson, because Mother Nature is a great thing which has given us the great lesson in the form of pandemic, where we all bound to sit in our homes. We wanted to go out, but we can't go out. We wanted to, like the kids, although I'm not a foodie and I don't want to have food from outside, but still I remember Bharti's, your food, it was amazing always, like in chatpata and so good. But then again, it's all homemade. So, it's always, I think, a great lesson, because if we go into the back, long time back, we all remember that when farmers used to crop the fields, first they put some field and then they give a break to the land. So, as well as, I don't know if people will like this example or not, but still, I believe as everything is connected. Humans are connected, lands are connected, nature is all connected, because it's all nature in the humans as well. When a mother, we all talk about that a woman needs a break after one delivery. After giving a birth to a child, she needs a break. So same goes with the nature, same goes with the field, same goes with the soil, with everything. So, that is also a big example when which time has shown, not only in the form of pandemic, it's a great lesson for all of us. And then we talk about the ecosystem, and we all know that few countries, especially the developing countries, either it's India, either it's Pakistan, either it's Bangladesh, there are few countries, those are not the reason of pollution or great for the problems, but we are suffering. We are suffering from that. So I think it doesn't matter what are the differences, but for few things, like if the nature is not going to be anymore, what are we going to do? So I think it's a right time to stand with each other and talk about, for like, as you all have already talked so much, I don't want to go in the repetition and I don't want to waste the time, but I have few very suggestions and the points which I'm having in my mind, like importance of recycling. Everybody, we do talked about that. So I think for that, nowadays the children are very much innovative, and they are the ones who could understand. We definitely talked a lot about the brands, the big brands especially. We all know that they are, like, as Bharti very well mentioned, that now there is another, they have developed a system in which, they can, people can sell their second-hand clothes and doing so far. But this practice is going so far long back. We are having that practice in Pakistan and in the poor countries where we call it Nanda Bazaar. So over there, people, they don't want to buy it. But now as it's coming into the trend, and if the big brands are talking about, so now, it could become a fashion, it could become anything in that. So I think we need to focus not only the fashion industry, we need to focus on the academia more. It's very much important that we need to engage academia. We need to engage the schools. We need to engage the people from all classes, especially, I believe, as being the child, whatever, because a child is a white paper. So whatever we're going to put or sort of a plain gadget, whatever app we're going to install in it, it's going to work out. So I think it's more important to focus on academia to make the children aware, make the people aware, make the societies aware. Although I must say that all you guys who are working, whatever I'm doing, it's just a needle in a haycock, but still I want to pay a tribute to all of you. Either it's SDPI, either it's Mariam, Bharti, Chintan, Archana ji, and whoever. So you all guys are the fighters, the soldiers for the nature, but the soldiers, those are not having the arm and immunization. You guys are having your souls, working with the nature, wanted to serve with the calm and with the smooth attitude, where you want to aware the people with your kind gestures. And I had want to mention, of course, we all remember that there was a great campaign which has been launched, and still it's going on, that Black is beautiful. Then we talked about in that, I hope especially the women, they must know about that we try to talk about in that. After that, the trend was being started where the people would start talking about, that Black is beautiful, so we should try to avoid the steroids, to whitening creams and all that stuff. So I think there is a need to come up with those sort of programs, those sort of what do we call it, trends. And here I want to welcome a new generation over here with the son of Mariam, who's, I think, joining us in a seminar. So then again, like, here we talk about the torn clothes, like, when the clothes, kapras all got old, how we can bring them into the new form, as Archana ji mentioned very nicely. So I think it's where we can talk about old as gold. Give love to nature so nature can love you. It's very much important that we should, can you hear me? Yeah. So I think it's very much important to talk about that old is gold, and give love to the nature so nature can love you. And without nature, we cannot exist. We cannot live without that, because if we are not going to get the water, how are we going to live? If we're not going to get the food, how are we going to live? We cannot live on the chips and on the plastic, although in so many forms we are eating the plastic and having the plastic and so many things. But I think it's more important that we should talk about the recycling, and by taking I think it's not the matter that wealth is yours, but resources belongs to the nature. We proudly say that, okay, I'm wealthy, I can get it, but nature matters a lot. And then how we can, one thing, consumption. It's very important that we should talk about the consumption too, because unfortunately, this is the missing component in everywhere, that we don't focus on. Like in Pakistan, I'm so sorry, I don't want to hurt anyone, or I don't want to go any political statement or something. But one question I always raise, that we do talk about the billion tree tsunami and all that, but we need to focus that how much the consumption is there. How are we going to give them, how are we going to give water to them, how are they going to impact on the nature, how, like, so I think it's more important that we should focus on that. And then by the taking of leverage, by the taking like forums which are already there, I just wanted to request and a suggestion that it is very important, it's a need of a time, that the policymakers, academia, media, and civil society, they should come all along, and we should come up with the policies where, like, very successfully, and Mariam and SDPI was a great part of that, to stop the plastic shopping bags and all that. And we have very successfully done that in Islamabad and different other parts. Like now in my home as well, we are not using any plastic bottles, we are using the glass bottles. We are trying to promote the flasks and that, old times lunch boxes and all that stuff. So I think here it comes where we need to talk about that, and we should come up with the forums where we can sit all together, as we're talking about, like, let's see, we talk about the tourism. In tourism, I've seen personally that on a very beautiful places, very beautiful places, but people are going and they're throwing the rubber, they're throwing the plastic, they're throwing the bottles, they're throwing the wrappers, and there is no one to check them. So, and not only that, then I wanted to talk about the upcoming trend of building the high-rise buildings, hotels, and all that. So, you know, there are few people who are, in different part of the world, like they have stopped people going on few places where it gave a bad impact to the ecosystem, to the to the heritage or to whatever. So I think here it comes very, very important to focus on these things. We need to come up with the things, no matter from where we are, from which, because for this pertinent issues, we all need to be on our toes. We all need to be together. And for that, we need to talk about the common grounds. We need to be together. We need to come up with the forums where we can talk, and not only about the fashion industries there. I think it's, we all, as we all from the same region, from same subcontinent, you know, we do talk about the bhed chal. You know, if one is going to that direction, everybody will say, oh, that's great, so let's go on that side. So I think it's very important to come up with the trends. Like, as I mentioned earlier, that black is beautiful. We can talk about old is gold, how we can bring the innovation. I would really love to share over here that with a very small capacity, I'm trying to promote 2-3 people, even my daughter as well, who's working on a few things. I'm working along with her, just taking the privilege of love to share with you all that, you know, how we can work with the old clothes and how to bring it in a new form, how we can promote that. And then we cannot forget that in this pandemic, there are so many opportunities, not only which has eye openers as well, and so many opportunities where we all we got ideas, and we think, and I really wanted to request SDPI that please, as always, you guys come up with the innovative ideas where you talked about the Green Caucus. If we can make it more, we could go forward towards it. We can come up with more work, and we should, with the policies, we should make some sort of laws in which we should make the industries bound that they have to do the recycling if they're gonna, you know, the big penalties towards them. So I think with this all, I don't want to take, I'm just getting emotional, and I just wanted to stay little focused, but I'm always there, a great support. And once again, thank you very much, SDPI, and it's great to see you, Bharti. Hope to see you someday, either in Canada or either in, hello to this young guy and Mr. Abid Suleri. It's a great learning always. Wish you all a very good luck, and I really am thoroughly happy to see you all. And whatever we can do together, I know, because Bharti is not only from India, right? She is, and all of you, it's all on this nature. Nature is mother of all of us. So we need to protect it. We need to be with it. We need to work for it. And as I've said, that you guys all are the soldiers with the wings, the soldiers with the love. And I think where there is a will, there is a way. And with your all way of love, the light, the path is there. We all need to go on. And I'm sure the young generation will love to go on it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romina Khurshid Alam, for very candid remarks and drawing our attention, in fact, towards areas which are neglected perhaps right now. And of course, debate can be generated around that. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Unfortunately, we are running ahead of time. So we have to leave question answer session unattended. You can always leave your questions over the email, and we can certainly send to organizers that they can really answer that. And bringing this, my little one reason is that he was crying, and another is that we really need to think about future generations and leave our environment which is sustainable and livable for every generation. Thank you very much, everyone.